What's up, everybody? Niko House here, and I'm one of the very privileged few to have received the honor of being a Tulsi Gabbard surrogate. And today I am here with the message that if you are still someone who is advocating against wasteful regime change wars, if you are still someone who is advocating for peace and diplomacy over fear-mongering and demagoguery, if you are still someone who believes in a secure election system, if you are still someone who believes that climate change is indeed a priority, not to be waited to be addressed when you're finally trying to run for president and you want to win, and you're just saying you want to make climate change a priority because that's the popular thing to say, but actually believe it is a priority and want to support someone who has shown a record in Congress that it is also her priority too. Tulsi Gabbard is still your candidate. I know there are a lot of people making their pitch right before Super Tuesday. I know there are a lot of people trying to say that you should switch from Tulsi Gabbard to another candidate because of how important this election is. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me just say this. This election is very important, but it is not only important to put someone in the White House. It is important to put someone in the White House that we know will pick the right people to be on their team, will pick the right people to be in their administration, who can challenge the military-industrial complex when they put out lies in an attempt to deceive the public and to deceive even leaders into engaging in a wasteful regime change war or engaging in some international extrajudicial assassination. We have someone right now, ladies and gentlemen, who, like JFK, question the intelligence communities who have set us up for failure time again. We have someone right now, ladies and gentlemen, who has showed the propensity to defend right for the sake of just being righteous. We have someone who's defended other presidential candidates. Obviously, she's running for president, but we have somebody who's defended other presidential candidates, despite the fact that she herself is running for president and has not received the same type of support from everyone else when it has come to being smeared in the race. We have someone who introduced the All Fossil Fuels Act in 2017, ladies and gentlemen. 2017, endorsed by 400 climate and environmental organizations. The most aggressive climate change legislation in the history of the world. Because when she said climate change is the immediate priority, she meant that. We have someone who challenged the narrative in Syria and was correct. We have someone who was the only presidential candidate to pick up the phone when 9/11 victims and their families called, and no other presidential candidate would even hear what they had to say, when all those victims were trying to do were hold the right people accountable. We have someone who puts integrity above everything and service above self. Why is it that everyone will say that, hey, we shouldn't be in Iraq, we shouldn't be in Afghanistan, but we shouldn't even be in Syria? There's a lot of people who say that. So why is it that the one candidate who's introduced legislation to pull out of Syria, why is that candidate not at the forefront of the conversation? If we say it's about policy, if we say we're concerned about Russia, the Democrats, the Republicans stealing elections from voters, why is it that the one candidate who's introduced the Securing America's Elections Act, which would use blockchain technology in conjunction with voter-verified paper ballots and paper ballot backups to not only ensure that we get the count right, but we have accountability in case someone does rig our election, why is that candidate not at the forefront of the conversation this election? And it's simple. People are not voting based off of policies. They're not amplifying candidates based off of policy. They are not covering candidates based off of policy. They're not even covering candidates or amplifying candidates based off of their potential allyship to the movement. Populist, progressive, independent, or otherwise. They're not basing it based off of the movie. They're basing it based off of their own personal agendas. They're basing it off of popularity contests. They're basing it off of what's trendy in the indie media world. Trendiness is what's got us here. Everybody wanted the next Obama. Everybody wanted the next Bill Clinton. And you know, there was one candidate, one president, who was also trendy. His name was JFK. And even though he started off a lot like Obama, he woke up and called out all the very same people that Tulsi Gabbard's called out. As we all well know, he's not here today. And there's a reason for that. Fast forward to 2020. We now have a candidate who is not just touching around the edges of JFK's message, but is holistically embodying JFK's message. From critiquing the intelligence communities, to calling out illegal wars, into talking about the shadow government that is working behind the scenes every day to undermine the will of the American people and to put our national security at risk. That's why it's no hard decision for me to endorse Tulsi Gabbard. It's been no difficult decision for me to vote for Tulsi Gabbard. It's been no difficult decision for me to speak at Tulsi Gabbard's events, to speak to media about Tulsi Gabbard. In fact, it's been the opposite. It's been a no-brainer for me. 20 plus candidates, ladies and gentlemen, have dropped out of the race. Tulsi Gabbard is still here. Tulsi Gabbard is still here. There's a reason for that. It's beyond 2020. We felt that way in 2019. It's beyond 2024. It's beyond president and vice president. It's beyond just covering domestic policy, pretending as if we give somebody health care, if we give somebody a job, that all of the foreign policy woes will go away, that the corruption that is embedded within our electoral system will go away. We have to address the root. But first we have to acknowledge that these problems exist. And then we have to celebrate the people who challenge those structural issues, that structural corruption that a lot of people choose to ignore for fear that it is too big to challenge. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that challenge has not been too big for Tulsi Gabbard. So I'm going to continue to fight for and continue to reaffirm my endorsement for the woman who was introduced to Securing America's Elections Act. When everyone else was crying about Russia, she fought to make sure our elections couldn't be hacked by anybody. Who introduced the Off Fossil Fuels Act, while everyone else was claiming that climate change was the most significant issue of our generation. Tulsi introduced the most aggressive climate change legislation in history, endorsed by over 400 climate and environmental organizations. While everyone else is saying that they're tired of pointless regime change wars, I'm going to support the woman who calls out the intelligence communities, who lie and deceive not only the American people but our leaders to push us into these wars. While everyone else is looking to find the next whoever that presidential, heir apparent may be for whatever your favorite candidate is. While everyone else is pushing to find the next repeat of the past, I am going to continue to celebrate the fact that I've been fortunate enough to be one of the very first endorsements and very first surrogates for the very, very first and last Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi 2020. Go out and vote today for Super Tuesday. Shout out to everyone who's already voted, no matter who you voted for. Shout out to everybody who's already voted. We don't vote shame around here. But if you were for all the things that I just spoke about, you have a choice to make today. You have a choice to make. Are you going to vote your conscience? Are you going to vote policy? Or are you going to vote for the trend? It's up to you. But either way, Like I said, it's bigger than 2020. It's bigger than 2024. It's bigger than president and vice president. The fight doesn't stop today. The fight doesn't stop tomorrow. The fight's not going to stop next year. No matter what happens today. Tulsi 2020, 2024, 2028, and beyond. We're here to stay. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, always remember more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.